Our today's guest is Ashley Seling, and she is going to tell you about what it means to be a conscious parenting coach, which is really exciting. And it is an unusual profession, and I'm sure that the world can totally use more conscious coaches that are for parents to bring in conscious children, right? So welcome, Ashley. So glad to have you here. So why don't you start by telling people what does it mean to be a conscious parenting coach?
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me. So being a conscious parenting coach means that I'm helping to guide moms and parents to be more aware of their conscious parenting journey with their kids. And in a nutshell, what that looks like is, as a mom, I am being present and intentional with how I am talking to, treating my kids, and understanding this relationship between myself and my child, that it's a two-way street to create a conscious relationship and a long-lasting relationship with my own kids. So that is what I help other moms and parents embody in their parenting journey.
Well, yeah, and this is so important nowadays, especially where so many, I think, women realizing that they themselves were not parented correctly, and then they don't want to give that same incorrect sort of a way to their children, but they might not know what the correct way is and probably slide into the patterns that they themselves were brought up in, right? Is that something you see a lot?
Definitely. Yes. And that's something I really dive in deep with my clients on. There's this generational pattern that happens. And in previous generations, parents would wing it or just do what they saw. And now going forward, parents really want to be more conscious in how they're approaching their relationship with their kids and not accidentally passing on these generational traumas, even if they're micro traumas, and raising their kids in a more loving, conscious way that feels better. And a lot of the times it's really about raising kids how we wish that we were raised. And to our previous generation's detriment or not detriment, we're learning what's working and what's not working.
Yeah, and probably so many times people kind of don't think of trauma as something that's minor, right? We tend to think trauma is like big thing, like somebody was abused or something. But a lot of times, like, you could respect your parents, you can love your parents, you think that they did a great job. And then when you have your own children, you realize all these micro traumas that you have yourself experienced that then you don't want to kind of give to your children, but you almost like catching yourself saying probably certain things, just repeating it. So do you see that happening when people almost like don't even recognize that there was certain trauma until they have their own child and then it comes out?
Yes, all the time. And the first thought that popped in my mind when you said that is, so often I hear people say, when I started yelling, I sounded like my mom. Mm. And there's this micro trauma of shame that comes out, or these feelings of good girl versus bad girl while we were growing up, and realizing that how we were treated as kids, we don't want to treat our kids the same way. And that in itself, I would consider as generational trauma, if you will. And it might not seem like it, but when you really start to dig deep, you see that, wow, this really affects the way that people are parenting, either conscious or unconsciously. Whether they know it or not, it does affect their parenting process.
Yeah, and it probably is also self-parenting, right? Because as you are coaching the mom to parent correctly her child, you're probably sort of coaching her to parent herself correctly.
Yes, yes. There's a reparenting process that happens when moms become aware of how they were parented and then how they want to parent. And it's really beautiful because there's so much inner child healing when that is opened and taken a look at, because it feels really good to self-soothe in the way that I desired to be soothed as a child. And now that I'm old enough and I'm a mom myself, I can reparent myself in the way that I crave to be parented as a child. And it's so beautiful. That's like the epitome of what I help moms do, is not only parent their children in this conscious way, but also begin to reparent themselves so that they can heal their own childhood wishings or cravings of what they desired as a child.
Yeah. So if we look at like, who would be your ideal client? Who would be the type of a woman that would come to you and say, okay, I would like help?
Yeah, great question. So often my ideal client is a mom with kids 2 to 10 years old. They know that they have a problem. Parenting isn't like an extreme problem at this point. They kind of have an idea of what might not be going right and the patterns that are happening. They're not completely in this distress mode. Like, they are ready for actionable change and they feel empowered that they can actually do it. So some examples here: moms that are facing tantrums with their kids are having tantrums, or their kids are showing defiant behavior, or those moms that have read a lot of parenting books and they're like, this is great, but I don't know how to implement it. Moms that have kids with multiple kids and there's sibling rivalry happening, battles and challenges. And oftentimes it's not just about specific parenting struggles, but also how the mom wants to feel. So if there's a mom listening to this and you want to feel more calm and confident in your approach, just overall in parenting, then that would be my ideal client.
And what would happen once somebody starts working with you? So let's say she's got 2 kids, one little, one maybe like 7, one maybe like 3, and there's issues going on. She's conscious, she's aware, she wants to feel confident. She starts working with you. What would you guide her through?
So the first steps would always be identifying why her kids are either acting out, or what her child's subconscious language is. So a term that might be more recognized is like her child's love language. And I've created my own process for identifying why kids act out or misbehave, or maybe even a child isn't acting out, but they're not following through with directions that mom is giving to her kids. So the first step is always identifying, where is the disconnect between mom and child, and how can she speak to her children with their subconscious, I guess, love language, if you will, and improve communication overall. And generally, a mom will see big improvements just after one session of working with me, because now she has these tools and understanding of why her child isn't listening, or why the tantrums are happening, or whatever behavior is happening at home, why it's happening, and what next steps to take.
Mm-hmm. And what would you recommend for somebody who's having an internal problem in addition to the external one?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are my favorite pieces to work on, because that's where the reparenting process comes in, like we were just talking about. So when we dive deeper into the internal problems, I look at 5 parenting triggers, and I've worked with hundreds of moms, and I just know what parenting triggers come up for moms. And we take a look at that and assess, okay, what is really at the root here of her internal parenting triggers, is what I call them. Or like inner child, what is her inner child or inner critic really battling with and needs to heal? And we bring up this conscious awareness of her internal challenges so that she can heal and move forward in a more present and intentional way. Because when we as mothers work on ourselves, the way that we show up to parent is so different. For example, if I'm a triggered mom, or if I'm activated and really angry and upset, I'm going to show up different to my kids versus if I'm calm and emotionally regulated. So the goal is when moms look at these internal struggles, that she can become more emotionally regulated to then show up to her kids and have this beautiful, more connected relationship that she really craves.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And how did you ended up doing this? I mean, obviously you're a mom, which means that makes sense. You discovered this on yourself, I'm sure, right? That your own parenting and then changing how you parent your own children. I bet that that's part of it. But how did you decide that, like, okay, I'm going to dig into this love language and inner triggers and everything, not just for me, but like I learned to recognize this in other moms and help them. Like, what started that direction for you?
Yeah. So there's two things really. One being, I used to lead new mom support groups. And that was when I had really young kids. I think I continued doing that until my older son was about 3-ish or 3 or 4. And I would have group experts come and speak, and I had a parenting coach come and speak. And it was just so eye-opening. I loved what I learned, and I needed to know more because number 2, there was a day that my kids now they're almost 5 and 7. I have 2 boys. And when my almost 7-year-old was like, he was about 2 years old, he told me that he hated me. And
that must have been hard.
Oof, ouch. It just hurt. And I knew that I couldn't continue parenting in the same way that I was parenting. And to be honest, I don't know what hurt more, him saying that he hated me or the way that I felt about myself. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized how I'm feeling as a mom is actually really important so that I can help my child regulate themselves. Because if I'm not regulated, there's no way that I can ask my child to be regulated.
Exactly. So, because they just copy us anyway. So
yeah, yes. And then it adds more to the more chaos, right? Too. Mm-hmm. So that was really the like defining moment of, I can't go another day like this. And I need to change because obviously what I was doing was not working. And that's where this conscious parenting really came in for me, realizing how can I change so that I can be a better mom? Because mm-hmm. it isn't just, oh, let me change my child's behavior, right? Like I could do all the behavioral tactics and tools and things, but if I don't change, then nothing is going to work.
Yeah. So would you say that that's what makes you different than other parenting coaches out there? Because from what I've seen, majority of parenting coaches are behavioral coaches, essentially.
Yeah.
And what absolutely. You do is way different.
Yeah. I think that is what makes me stand out, that I really focus on the belief, why is a child really acting in a certain way? And then reverse engineering, well, how can we encourage this child that's behaving in this way to still, yes, improve behavior, but also create a stronger connection? So absolutely. I think that is what makes me stand out, because I'm not one to post like, yes, I do post tips and tricks and things, but there's so many Instagram pages or pages, coaches that just post like, say this or do this. Those are great. But if you don't understand it on a deeper level of what's really going on there, then the change is just going to be temporary. It's not a long-term change in that case.
So what would you say is your bigger vision for the world? I mean, what you're doing is definitely a mission to change this world through parenting. So how would you describe that?
When I first started, and this still stands true today, I want to take the shame and blame out of parenting and shift it to be more encouraging and less punitive. And I just see that as a ripple effect to future generations, and giving my children the tools so that when they become parents, they feel really equipped with having a good role model of how to parent. So I hope that answers your question, because it
Yeah.
feels like such a big vision to me. And then I say it and it's like, oh, yeah,
Well, it
take
is
the
a
shame and
big
blame out of
vision.
parenting.
Yeah, and it does change the world because, I mean, just think about it. If every woman knows how to love herself correctly, so then she can love her child correctly, then these children will grow up different people and probably love their children differently. So why is that important to you? I mean, obviously, it's a conceptually makes sense, but why is it personally matters to you? Why do you do it? I'm sure it's not always easy.
Yeah, I do it because having a close relationship with my kids for my entire life is really important. Every family dynamic has, difficult family members. And going through that personally with my own family, I really want to cultivate this trusting, safe relationship so that my kids, they want to spend time with me, so that they want to come visit when they're older and they want to come home for Christmas or Thanksgiving. And I really think that the foundation for that happens in these earlier years of childhood, where we're setting our kids up for not only, professional success, but emotional success too. And oftentimes I talk about how the way that the child's brain develops is around the age of 7, logic and reasoning start to develop. And by that point, kids are able to really connect the dots and they're forming beliefs about themselves and the world. And I just want those thoughts for my kids, and all children deserve to have these positive, empowering beliefs for themselves. And I think that that is one of the foundational pieces, so that as my kids get older, they want to continue to have a great relationship with me.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And that is true. I'm sure a lot of people who would hear this in their heart would be like, oh, I wish I knew this. Or if you have children now, this is definitely something that is the time to correct before it goes into a direction where it's much harder to do later on in life. So
Absolutely.
when somebody works with you, is it like a 6 months, 3 months, like few weeks? Like how does the process work, if you can like quickly describe it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a 3-month option. It's a 1-to-1 program. And that's where I really dive into the mom's personal parenting triggers or internal struggles, the child's triggers, the child's subconscious language. And then I recently just came out with a 6-week 1-to-1 option, which is where we are laser focused on the child's subconscious language, like their love language. And I've been getting really awesome results from that. It's the first time I've offered something so short term like that. But those are the 2 one-on-one options. And then I do have a workshop called Misbehavior Makeover that also explores the child's subconscious language, so that if a mom isn't quite ready for one-on-one support, it's a really great starting place for her to begin to understand, oh, well, this is why my kid is doing these crazy things. And they're not actually trying to be mean. They're just doing things that kids do. And it brings a lot of awareness and consciousness to the process in general.
Oh, that's great. So this is like you named 3 or 4 different pieces of your business. How do you find, from the business standpoint as a coach, that this arrangement of things helped you versus having, let's say, just one-on-one appointments?
I think it helps me stay clear on my client's journey and the pieces that they need to be successful. And like bringing awareness to these specific pieces of the parenting process, I think are really important. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I also think from the standpoint of the parent going through it, it's also probably a different experience to, it's like a building blocks, one with another to the next versus just come in, kind of like resolve one problem and leave.
Right.
I don't see you necessarily as a problem solver in a traditional sense, like you don't do emergencies. You look more like somebody who would help another person upgrade their parenting style versus just like solve an immediate problem.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And I think overall that, one-on-one session, it might make a difference, but it may not be quite enough to truly get the results that they want and need. So yeah, I've dabbled with one session in the past, and it just doesn't, for me, I know that they need more. So I've kind of packaged this in a way that is most valuable to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find that helped your business as well to grow by having it packaged like that?
Yeah, I think so. It makes it more clear and accessible. And also, people are more committed when they are purchasing a package versus just one-on-one session.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if somebody wanted to kind of dive in a little bit of what you do to understand more about it, see if you are the coach for them, if they have children and they're looking for a conscious parenting coach, how can they start with you? What would you recommend?
I'd recommend joining my free Facebook community. It's called Calm Moms Parenting with Patience and Confidence. I do videos in there, trainings, post engagement things, and tips to really just begin to understand why parenting in this way is important. And I think that's a great way to just become more familiar with exactly my approach to parenting and how it could be valuable to them.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for being here. This was an awesome conversation. So this is Ashley Seling. You can find her at ashleyselling.com, and she is a conscious parenting coach.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me.